Stop me if this sounds familiar. There's someone in your life who can predict your next move before you make it, who seems to have a direct line to your soul, who makes you feel like the most important person in the room, and then vanishes like they never existed. You're not going crazy. You've encountered what I call the ghost who cares too much, an INFJ. These people are human paradoxes walking around in disguise. They're the friend who throws you the perfect surprise party then doesn't show up to their own birthday. They're the coworker who solves everyone's problems but can't decide what to have for lunch. They're the partner who knows your deepest fears but won't tell you what movie they want to watch. Here's the thing nobody tells you. INFJs aren't trying to be mysterious. They're not playing hard to get. They're literally wired backwards from the rest of us, and that's exactly why they're the most misunderstood people on the planet. Think of them as emotional ninjas. They can read a room in seconds, disappear without a trace, and somehow always know exactly what you need to hear. But ask them about themselves? Good luck with that. Today we're going behind the mask to decode these beautiful contradictions. You'll finally understand why they do those things that make absolutely no sense, and more importantly, how to build a connection with them that most people never even get close to. Whether you're trying to figure out that mysterious person in your life, or you are that person wondering why nobody gets you, this is your roadmap to cracking the INFJ code. Ready to solve the mystery? Let's go. 1. The invisible majority. Why INFJs hide in plain sight. Let's start with something that'll blow your mind. INFJs are everywhere, yet nowhere at the same time. They're sitting in your office, teaching your kids, serving your coffee, maybe even living in your house. But you probably don't know they're INFJs because they've mastered the art of blending in. See, INFJs are natural chameleons. They can adapt their behavior to fit almost any social situation. At work, they might come across as the organized, efficient team player. At parties, they could be the life of the party, cracking jokes and making everyone feel included. But here's the kicker. None of these versions might be the real them. This ability to shapeshift isn't about being fake or manipulative. It's actually a survival mechanism. INFJs are highly sensitive to the emotions and needs of others, so they automatically adjust their behavior to create harmony. They're like emotional thermostats, constantly reading the room and adjusting their temperature accordingly. But this constant adaptation comes with a price. Many INFJs lose touch with their authentic selves because they're so busy being what others need them to be. They might not even realize they're doing it. It's become second nature. This is why you might know an INFJ for years and still feel like there's something you can't quite grasp about them. The paradox deepens when you consider that INFJs desperately want to be understood and accepted for who they really are. Yet they keep hiding behind these carefully constructed masks. It's like they're screaming, "See me," while wearing an invisibility cloak. 2. The empathy overload, feeling everyone's pain. If you've ever wondered why that quiet person in your group seems to know exactly what you're going through, they might be an INFJ. These individuals don't just sympathize with others, they literally feel what others feel. It's like having emotional superpowers, but without the cool costume or the ability to turn them off. INFJs possess what psychologists call cognitive empathy and emotional empathy in spades. They can intellectually understand why someone's upset, but they also physically feel that person's emotions in their own body. Imagine walking into a room and immediately sensing that someone's anxious, sad, or angry. Not because they told you, but because you can feel it radiating off them like heat from a fireplace. This empathetic ability makes INFJs incredible friends, counselors, and partners. They're the ones who notice when you're having a bad day before you even say anything. They're the friends who bring you soup when you're sick, who remember your important dates, who somehow know exactly what to say when you're going through a tough time. But here's where it gets tricky. This same empathy that makes them so wonderful to be around can also be their biggest burden. INFJs often struggle to distinguish between their own emotions and the emotions they're picking up from others. They might feel depressed and not realize it's because they spent the day around someone who was going through a rough patch. It's like being an emotional sponge that never gets wrung out. They absorb everyone's feelings throughout the day, and by evening, they're emotionally exhausted and don't even know why. This leads to the classic INFJ behavior of suddenly disappearing or becoming distant. They're not being rude, they're just overwhelmed and need time to sort through all the emotions they've collected. 3. The social butterfly who needs solitude. Here's where INFJs really start to confuse people. They can be incredibly social and engaging, making everyone around them feel heard and valued. They're often the ones organizing group activities, checking in on friends, and making sure everyone's included. But then, suddenly they vanish. This disappearing act isn't personal, it's necessary. INFJs need solitude like plants need sunlight. After being on for others, they need time alone to recharge, process, and reconnect with themselves. But because they're so good at being social, people don't understand why they suddenly need space. The confusion gets worse because INFJs often feel guilty about their need for alone time. They worry that people will think they're selfish or that they don't care. So they might push themselves to be social even when they're running on empty, which only makes the eventual crash worse. This creates a cycle that's hard for others to understand. One day the INFJ is the perfect friend, available, understanding, and fun to be around. The next day they're not returning calls and seem to have dropped off the face of the earth. People start to wonder, do they actually like me or were they just being polite? The truth is INFJs need both connection and solitude to function. They're like introverted extroverts or extroverted introverts. They genuinely enjoy being around people and often need social interaction to feel fulfilled, but they also need significant alone time to maintain their emotional equilibrium. 4. The perfectionist who embraces chaos. INFJs are walking contradictions when it comes to order and chaos. On one hand, they're often perfectionists who have detailed plans and high standards for themselves and their work. They might spend hours crafting the perfect email or redoing a project until it meets their exacting standards. But on the other hand, many INFJs live in organized chaos. Their desk might be covered with papers, their bedroom might have clothes draped over every surface, and their car might be filled with random items they've been meaning to deal with for months. This apparent contradiction confuses people who expect perfectionists to be neat and organized in all areas of their lives. The reality is that INFJs are selective perfectionists. They pour their energy into the things that matter most to them, their relationships, their creative projects, their personal growth. But they might let less important things slide because they only have so much mental energy to go around. This selective perfectionism extends to their relationships too. INFJs might have impossibly high standards for deep, meaningful connections, but they're surprisingly accepting of human flaws and imperfections. They want authentic relationships even if they're messy, rather than perfect relationships that feel fake. They're also perfectionists about their own personal growth. INFJs are constantly working on themselves, reading self-help books, going to therapy, practicing meditation, or finding other ways to become better versions of themselves. But they're often their own harshest critics, never feeling like they're good enough or doing enough. 5. The decisive procrastinator. Ask an INFJ to make a decision and you might be waiting a while. These individuals can spend hours, days, or even weeks mulling over choices that others would make in minutes. They'll research every option, consider all the possible outcomes, and worry about making the wrong choice. But here's the paradox. When it really matters, INFJs can make decisions with lightning speed. In a crisis, they're often the ones who step up and take charge. They can quickly assess a situation and know exactly what needs to be done. It's like they have two different decision-making modes, tortoise mode for everyday choices and superhero mode for emergencies. This decision-making struggle comes from their desire to make the right choice. INFJs don't just want to pick the option that works for them, they want to pick the option that's best for everyone involved. They're considering not just their own needs, but the needs of their family, friends, and sometimes even strangers who might be affected by their decision. They're also dealing with their intuitive nature, which gives them a lot of information to process. While others might go with their gut feeling, INFJs are getting multiple gut feelings and trying to figure out which one to trust. Their intuition is constantly feeding them possibilities, and they want to explore all of them before committing to a path. The procrastination gets worse when the decision involves potential conflict. INFJs hate disappointing people, so they might delay making a choice if they know it will upset someone. They'll keep looking for the magical solution that makes everyone happy, even when such a solution doesn't exist. 6. The logical dreamer. INFJs are dreamers, but they're not naive dreamers. They have big visions for how the world could be better, but they also have the practical skills to make those visions reality. This combination of idealism and pragmatism confuses people who expect dreamers to be impractical and practical people to be unimaginative. These individuals can spend hours fantasizing about their perfect life, their ideal career, or their vision for solving world problems. But they're also the ones who'll create detailed plans, research practical steps, and work steadily toward their goals. They're not just dreaming, they're plotting. Their dreams aren't random either. INFJs tend to have a clear sense of purpose that guides their aspirations. They want to make a meaningful difference in the world, and their dreams usually center around helping others or creating something that will have a positive impact. They're not dreaming about fame or fortune. They're dreaming about significance. But this practical idealism can be frustrating. INFJs often see exactly how things could be improved, but they also see all the obstacles that stand in the way. They might have brilliant ideas for solving problems but feel overwhelmed by the complexity of actually implementing those solutions. The logical side of their nature also makes them question their own dreams. They might talk themselves out of pursuing something they're passionate about because they can't see a clear, practical path to success. They want to follow their hearts, but they also want to make smart decisions. 7. The independent helper. INFJs are natural helpers. They're the ones who notice when someone needs support and offer it without being asked. They're generous with their time, energy, and resources when it comes to helping others. But paradoxically, they're also fiercely independent and often struggle to accept help from others. This creates a confusing dynamic in relationships. The INFJ is always there for everyone else, but when they need support, they might disappear rather than reach out. They'll give advice, lend money, provide emotional support, and do whatever it takes to help the people they care about. But when they're struggling, they often try to handle everything alone. This independence isn't about pride, it's about not wanting to burden others. INFJs are so aware of how much emotional labor they put on others that they don't want to add their own problems to the mix. They also worry that their problems are too complex or too intense for others to handle. The helping behavior is also selective. INFJs don't help everyone equally. They invest their energy in people and causes that align with their values. They might move mountains to help someone they believe in, but they won't lift a finger for someone they see as manipulative or harmful. This selective helping can confuse people who expect consistency. They might see an INFJ go above and beyond for one person while seeming indifferent to another person's needs. What they don't realize is that INFJs are constantly making value judgments about where to invest their limited energy. 8. The confident insecurity. INFJs often come across as confident and self-assured, especially when they're talking about their values or their vision for the future. They speak with conviction about what they believe in and what they think needs to change in the world. But underneath this apparent confidence lies a deep well of insecurity and self-doubt. This confidence shows up most clearly when INFJs are in their element, when they're helping others, working on something they're passionate about, or standing up for their principles. In these moments, they seem to know exactly who they are and what they're doing. They speak with authority and inspire others with their certainty. But in other areas of their lives, INFJs can be surprisingly insecure. They might doubt their own abilities, worry about whether people actually like them, or question whether they're making the right choices. They're often their own worst critics, holding themselves to impossibly high standards and feeling like failures when they don't meet them. This insecurity is partly due to their perfectionist tendencies and partly due to their empathetic nature. Because they're so aware of other people's emotions and opinions, they're constantly second-guessing themselves. They might change their behavior based on a single comment or worry for days about whether they said the wrong thing. The confidence insecurity paradox is especially confusing for people who are close to INFJs. They see someone who seems to have it all together, who gives great advice and seems to know what they're doing. Then they get a glimpse behind the curtain and realize that this same person is struggling with self-doubt and anxiety. 9. The organized chaos creator. INFJs have their own unique relationship with organization and structure. They crave order and often work best when they have systems and routines in place. They might have elaborate planning systems, detailed schedules, and specific ways of doing things that help them feel in control. But they also have a tendency to create chaos in their pursuit of perfection. They might start multiple projects at once, reorganize their entire filing system when they only needed to find one document, or completely overhaul their routine because it wasn't working perfectly. This chaotic organization extends to their physical spaces too. An INFJ's home might be meticulously organized in some areas and completely chaotic in others. They might have a perfectly arranged bookshelf next to a desk covered in papers, or a spotless kitchen with a bedroom that looks like a tornado hit it. The chaos usually comes from their tendency to get absorbed in projects and lose track of everything else. When an INFJ is working on something they're passionate about, they might forget to eat, sleep, or clean. They become so focused on their goal that everything else falls by the wayside. They're also prone to what some people call analysis paralysis when it comes to organizing. They might spend so much time thinking about the perfect organizational system that they never actually implement it. Or they might start organizing and then get distracted by memories attached to the items they're sorting through. 10. The future-focused nostalgic. INFJs are natural future thinkers. They're constantly planning, dreaming, and working toward their goals. They have a clear vision of where they want to be and what they want to accomplish. But they're also deeply nostalgic and often get lost in memories of the past. This temporal paradox shows up in many ways. An INFJ might spend hours planning their ideal future while also spending hours looking through old photos and reminiscing about past experiences. They might be excited about upcoming changes while also feeling sad about leaving the past behind. Their nostalgia isn't just about happy memories either. INFJs often replay past conversations, relationships, and experiences, analyzing what went wrong and what they could have done differently. They might revisit old hurts or regrets, trying to understand and learn from them. But this backward-looking tendency doesn't stop them from being future-focused. INFJs are often motivated by their vision of what could be. They're working towards something better, whether that's personal growth, a career change, or a better world. They use their past experiences as lessons to inform their future decisions. The challenge comes when these two orientations conflict. An INFJ might want to move forward but feel held back by past experiences. They might know what they want to do but worry about repeating past mistakes. They're simultaneously pulled toward the future and anchored in the past. 11. The rational emotional processor. INFJs feel deeply, but they also think deeply about their feelings. They're not the type to just experience an emotion and move on. They want to understand it, analyze it, and figure out what it means. This analytical approach to emotions can be confusing to people who expect emotional people to be irrational. When an INFJ is upset, they might spend hours journaling about their feelings, talking through them with a trusted friend, or researching ways to better understand their emotional reactions. They want to know why they feel the way they do and what they can learn from the experience. This rational approach to emotions helps INFJs in many ways. They're often emotionally intelligent and can help others understand their own feelings. They're also good at working through complex emotional situations and finding solutions to relationship problems. But it can also be a weakness. Sometimes INFJs get so caught up in analyzing their emotions that they forget to just feel them. They might intellectualize their feelings instead of processing them emotionally. Or they might get stuck in analysis mode when what they really need is to take action. The rational emotional paradox also shows up in how INFJs deal with conflict. They might feel deeply hurt by something someone said, but they'll also try to understand the other person's perspective and find a logical solution to the problem. They're simultaneously processing their emotional reaction and trying to think their way through the situation. 12. The selective sharer. INFJs are known for being open and authentic, but they're also surprisingly selective about what they share and with whom. They might have deep, meaningful conversations with one person while keeping things surface level with everyone else. This selective sharing can make them seem inconsistent or even fake to people who don't understand their boundaries. The truth is that INFJs have different levels of relationships, and they share different parts of themselves at each level. They might be friendly and warm with acquaintances, but they only share their deeper thoughts and feelings with a select few people they trust completely. This selectivity is partly about self-protection. INFJs are sensitive to criticism and judgment, so they're careful about who they open up to. They need to feel safe and accepted before they'll share their true selves. They've often been hurt by people who didn't understand or appreciate their depth, so they've learned to be cautious. But it's also about respecting boundaries. INFJs understand that not everyone wants or needs to know their deepest thoughts and feelings. They're good at reading people and adjusting their communication style accordingly. They might share their struggles with a close friend but keep things light with a coworker. The selective sharing can create confusion in relationships. People might feel like they're getting mixed signals from an INFJ. Sometimes they seem open and available, and other times they seem closed off and distant. The key is understanding that INFJs have different comfort levels with different people. 13. The compassionate critic. INFJs are incredibly compassionate and understanding, but they're also capable of sharp criticism when their values are violated. They might be the most patient, forgiving person you know, until you do something that goes against their core beliefs. Then they can become surprisingly harsh and unforgiving. This compassionate criticism shows up most clearly in their relationships. An INFJ might tolerate a lot of flaws and mistakes from someone they care about, but if that person betrays their trust or acts in a way that conflicts with the INFJ's values, the relationship can be over in an instant. INFJs have what some people call bright lines, clear boundaries that they won't cross and won't tolerate others crossing. These might include things like dishonesty, cruelty, or betrayal. They're usually pretty clear about what these boundaries are, but people often don't take them seriously until it's too late. The criticism isn't usually personal, it's about behavior and choices. INFJs can separate the person from their actions, but they have a hard time accepting actions that conflict with their values. They might still love someone who has disappointed them, but they won't continue to have a relationship with them if they keep making the same harmful choices. This paradox can be especially confusing for people who are used to the INFJ's compassionate side. They might think they can get away with anything because the INFJ has been so understanding in the past. But when they cross that bright line, they're shocked by the INFJ's strong reaction. Conclusion: understanding the beautiful contradiction. After exploring all these paradoxes, you might be wondering, how can one personality type be so contradictory? The answer lies in understanding that INFJs aren't actually contradictory, they're complex. They're human beings who contain multitudes just like everyone else, but their particular combination of traits creates patterns that can seem confusing to others. The key to understanding INFJs is recognizing that all of their seemingly contradictory behaviors stem from a few core characteristics: their deep empathy, their strong values, their need for authenticity, and their desire to help others while also protecting themselves. Once you understand these driving forces, their behavior starts to make sense. INFJs aren't trying to be mysterious or confusing, they're just trying to navigate a world that often doesn't understand them. They're sensitive people living in a world that often values toughness over sensitivity. They're idealists living in a world that often prioritizes practicality over vision. They're deep thinkers living in a world that often rewards quick answers over thoughtful consideration. The beautiful thing about INFJs is that once you understand them, they become incredibly loyal, supportive, and enriching people to have in your life. They're the friends who will listen to your problems for hours, the partners who will support your dreams even when they seem impossible, and the colleagues who will work tirelessly to make the world a better place. If you're an INFJ watching this, know that your complexity isn't a flaw, it's a gift. Your ability to hold multiple perspectives, to feel deeply, to dream big while staying grounded, and to care for others while also caring for yourself makes you uniquely valuable. The world needs people like you, even if it doesn't always understand you. And if you're not an INFJ but you have one in your life, take the time to understand them. Be patient with their need for solitude, appreciate their depth, and don't take their complexity personally. The investment you make in understanding them will be repaid many times over in the richness they bring to your life. The INFJ paradox isn't really a paradox at all. It's simply the beautiful complexity of human nature expressed through a particular personality type. And in a world that often tries to put people in simple boxes, maybe we could all learn something from the INFJs who refuse to be easily categorized. Remember, personality types are just tools for understanding ourselves and others better. They're not destinies or excuses. They're starting points for deeper understanding and better relationships. Whether you're an INFJ or you love one, the goal isn't to use their type as an explanation for everything they do, but rather as a lens for seeing them more clearly and appreciating the unique gifts they bring to the world. So the next time you encounter someone who seems like a walking contradiction, who's both social and solitary, both confident and insecure, both organized and chaotic, remember that you might be looking at an INFJ. And instead of being confused by their complexity, maybe you can appreciate the beautiful, multifaceted human being standing in front of you.